want you guys to work together. As Mukuro slowly turned her head toward Monokuma, he pointed at her and yelled, Mukuro Ikusaba and her accomplice Makoto Naegi are the terrorists responsible for locking you all inside the academy. Once again, time stopped for Mukuro. But this time, she wasn't the only one affected. Everyone seemed to be frozen in shock. After a few seconds of silence, Aoi Asahina, the ultimate swimming pro, spoke first. Huh? You're kidding, right? I mean, Makoto's a terrorist? That's impossible. And who's Mukuro anyway? I mean, that's Junko. Monokuma began slowly explaining to Aoi. The real Junko must be imprisoned somewhere in this school. Worst case scenario, she might be killed. Mukuro must have researched which one of you would be easiest for her to impersonate and hid among you all pretending to be her. Trying to pretend what? She was probably trying to make sure the killing game went smoothly. Suddenly, Monokuma's hands and feet began jerking in an awkward motion as he looked at the other students and introduced himself. I'm Beshiki Madurai, the ultimate hacker. I'm your upperclassman. I hacked into the academy from the outside, and I was finally able to take control of Monokuma's body just a little while ago. Take control? From who? The head of the terrorist organization that's controlling this robot from the outside. What? What are you saying, Junko? Mukuro trembled as she heard the words coming out of Monokuma's mouth. For a brief moment, she clung to the hope that her sister wasn't trying to kill her, but as soon as that hope was born, it was immediately consumed by despair. Junko had the power to transform hope into despair. She would never let anyone hack her that easily. There was only one explanation. Junko Enoshima was pretending to be someone named Beshiki in order to frame Mukuro and Makoto. It was as though Junko was using Mukuro's survival as a branching path to lead the students to a different despair. Monokuma continued talking, telling the students more lies designed to prod them into action. On your first day at Hope's Peak Academy, you guys were exposed to sleeping gas, knocked unconscious, and taken hostage. Mukuro and Makoto are probably the only operatives that the terrorists sent inside the school. That means they probably know how to escape from here. And then Monokuma turned to face Mukuro. Mukuro Ikusaba was a member of a mercenary group called Fenrir. She's a wanted criminal who's killed over 10 people associated with the school. So don't get soft and think you can capture her alive. In fact, that's exactly what the cops told me. So the moment I saw an opening, I tried hacking the trap they set and tried to kill her. But what about Makoto? Monokuma gave a cold, emotionless answer to Sayaka's question. Sorry, again, I don't know who's talking sometimes, so... My guess is that a measly little ultimate lucky student didn't stand a chance of defying a group like Fenrir. He was probably threatened and forced to cooperate before you entered the school. Or, judging from his earlier actions, maybe Mukuro seduced him. Sayaka's face went pale when she heard that answer, and she immediately stopped talking. Mukuro raised her head and shouted, You're wrong! Makoto isn't a terrorist! You all have to believe me! The whole gym fell silent, and then, as if he was speaking for everyone there, Taka stepped forward and nervously asked, Oh, hold on! What do you mean, Makoto isn't a terrorist? It sounds like you're saying that there's no doubt that you, in fact, are a terrorist. I ask that you correct yourself at once and say, we are not terrorists. Celeste began expressing her own doubts as well. It is strange. Does it not seem odd that she is so protective of someone we all just met a few days ago? Mukuro stood in silence. The other students' faces began to fill with suspicion and doubt as they realized they weren't looking at the real Junko Enoshima. Byakuya pushed up his glasses and began coldly pointing out what seemed out of place to him. I heard that fool Makoto, or whatever his name is, call you Mukuro instead of Junko. How would Makoto know that your name is really Mukuro if he just met you not that long ago? That's... I've also heard of Fenrir, continued Byakuya. As I recall, its members have a tattoo somewhere on their body. Instinctively, Byakuya's words put Mukuro into a calm state of mind. In hostile situations, her defensive reflexes as the ultimate soldier often manifested themselves. Mukuro's tattoo was on the back of her right hand. She wondered how she could hide this from the other students without also calling attention to it. But in the end, this concern was in vain. If the police's records are true, she should have a tattoo on the back of her right hand. It was Monokuma. As Monokuma freely divulged that information... All right, cried Taka, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Show us the back of your right hand and prove your innocence. Monokuma dispensed another unnecessary remark. Make sure you look real close. She might have covered it up with foundation. Junko had ordered Mukuro to hide her tattoo with foundation, so Monokuma's information was entirely true. There was nothing Mukuro could do except stay quiet. However, she wasn't staying quiet because her identity was about to be exposed. She was struck by the realization that her sister was completely serious about pinning this on her. "Why the hesitation?" shouted the foolishly honest Taka. "As my classmate, I have complete faith in you." From behind him, Hifumi Yamada, the ultimate fanfic creator, murmured to himself as cold sweat ran down his cheeks. "Well, look at that. I guess this is what they call a checkmate, huh? Why don't you just fess up already, you fucking bastard?" In contrast to Hifumi, Mondo Owada, the ultimate biker gang leader, was royally pissed. However, there were some students who were busy questioning Monokuma instead of Mukuro. "Hey, you're not coming to save us?" shouted Leon Kuwata. "They spelled Kuwata wrong." The ultimate baseball star, "You should hurry up and charge in here already." Monokuma looked at Leon and shook his head softly. "The police can't help you right now. Not only are you guys hostages, it's possible that the entire school has been rigged with explosives and poisonous gas. I hacked into this Monokuma robot to investigate that for myself." "Then what about Oh, sorry, it's Sayaka. "Then what about everyone on that DVD? What about everyone outside the school?" asked Sayaka. The memory of the DVD she was forced to watch yesterday still weighed heavily on her mind, but Monokuma didn't have a clear answer. "Hey, Clock. I don't know anything about any DVDs, but there are definitely terrorists causing havoc out there. Out here. Law enforcement around the world is in shambles trying to deal with this." "That's impossible!" Sayaka shuddered and collapsed to her knees. Sayaka. Sorry. I'm losing it. Sayaka. Next to her, Chihiro Fujisaki, the ultimate programmer, was unsure about what she should do. Behind her, two other girls stood silently. The first was Toko Fukawa, the ultimate writing prodigy. She seemed to be trying very hard not to look at Makoto as he lay bleeding. The other was a quiet girl who hadn't talked about herself much, named Kyoko Kirigiri. Unlike Toko, Kyoko was watching everything intently, as if she were studying the scene of a crime. From Makoto's breathing patterns to subtle changes in Mukuro's facial expression, nothing was escaping her attention. Suddenly, Toko began nervously talking to Sakura. "So anyway, let's just hurry. I don't know why I'm saying let's just hurry. Let's just say that Mukuro woman, or whoever over there, is a terrorist. Hurry up and beat her to death or something." "We don't know that yet," said Sakura. "My fists do not that word out justice, based on simple speculation, derp." Sakura tried to get near Makoto to examine his wounds, but Monokuma stood in her way, shouting, "Don't come any closer!" This meant that Mukuro was the only one who could get close to Makoto. She had ended countless lives on the battlefield, she knew from experience. If she didn't treat Makoto's wounds, he would die. His wounds were not immediately fatal, but if he continued losing blood, he would eventually slip into shock and die shortly after. "Please, you need to treat Makoto first." "Absolutely not," said Byakuya, harshly interrupting Mukuro. "Tying you up and examining the back of your right hand is the first priority." "Hey, Makoto's in danger!" "Now's not the time for that," said Aoi as she cast a worried glance at Makoto. She was still having trouble understanding the situation and hadn't decided if Makoto was suspicious or not. My fist to not that word justice. Or, I don't know that word justice. "Hello." Byakuya was about to snap back at her, but Mukuro's action stunned him into silence. She took a deep breath, and then Mukuro removed the blonde wig from her head. Where there were two long blonde pigtails only a moment before, there was now short black hair. She cleared her face of all emotion, and when she spoke, her voice rang throughout the gym. "I'm not Junko Enoshima. My name is Mukuro Ikusaba." The students stared wide-eyed at her open confession. All she did was remove her wig and clear her emotions, but in doing so, the person the students had recognized as Junko Enoshima vanished from their sight. The terrorist that had taken her place continued to speak in a calm, stoic tone. "I helped lock everyone inside the academy. The confession on a seaside cliff moment has the confession on a seaside cliff moment has finally arrived," Hifumi blurted out. Who's talking? Oh, what? "Wigs are against school regulations, Junko! I mean, Mukuro!" shouted Taka. I love Taka. As if stirred by their cries of excitement, the other students began clamoring among themselves. "Huh?" Yes, said Yasuhiro. "So Makoto's wounds are, like, real?"
Does that mean that stuff about terrorists and whatever is all real too? So everything that's happened these past few days wasn't a bunch of staged events?
As the reality of the situation began dawning on Yasuhiro, all Leon could say to him was, "Shut the hell up!" Byakuya just remained calm and addressed Mukuro in a condescending manner.
What does your group want? If you were after money, you would have already tried to negotiate with me. Of course, I'd rather let them die than surrender to your ransom demands.
Our purpose is to fill the world with despair.
Byakuya scoffed at this notion and began to speak once again. I see. Monokuma said something similar, so that ideology is what fuels your terrorism. It's true, if you did anything to me, you would certainly fill the world with despair, but obviously that would be impossible for you.
Aoi couldn't believe what Byakuya was saying and frowned as she muttered, "How self-centered can you be?" After confirming that Byakuya had no more questions for her, Mukuro looked at Makoto, whose breathing had slowed and let her voice show some emotion. "But Makoto has nothing to do with this. You can't believe what Monokuma says."
"What'd you say, bitch?" shouted Mondo. "I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're a terrorist, just like Monokuma said."
Mukuro looked away from Mondo and continued speaking. "That's true, but Makoto isn't involved at all." Celeste coldly brushed her objection aside. "I do not think trying to protect him will do you any good. After all, we all heard Makoto call you by your real name." "That's..." She had no words. There was nothing she could say to protect Makoto, even though Makoto was truly innocent. Though Mukuro was the ultimate soldier, her powers were largely limited to battle. Even a normal high school student could outwit her when it comes to debate and negotiation. If she were the ultimate negotiator, she might be able to convince them that their memories had really been erased. But in her current situation, if she tried to bring up their memory loss, they would think it was a desperate excuse. Even Mukuro knew that. But even if she didn't know what to say, she still knew what to do. "Right now, we need to treat Makoto first." And then she started walking toward Makoto as if nothing had happened. To the others, it seemed like Mukuro had decided to abruptly change the subject. "Hold it, we will immediately take Makoto to the nurse's office for treatment. However, we must tie you up." This was Sakura's honest demand, but there was no way Mukuro could accept it. If she was separated from Makoto, there'd be no telling what Monokuma would do to him. And between Mondo's hot temper and Byakuya's cold heart, Makoto could easily sustain further injuries under the pretense of interrogation. Furthermore, among these students, Mukuro knew she was the only one who had experienced treating wounds due to her time with Fenrir. After mulling that over, she narrowed her eyes and went silent. Her mind was made up. She was determined to fight her way out of here and escape with Makoto. "I apologize, but I need you to fall asleep right now." As she said that, Sakura instantly positioned herself behind Mukuro. Oh, sorry, Sakura said that. She was completely within her blind spot. To a normal person, it would have seemed like Sakura had suddenly vanished. After moving faster than any human being could see, Sakura's equally fast hands launched a blow toward the back of Mukuro's neck. However... "Sorry, Sakura, but I need to get out of here." Mukuro parried Sakura's fist with a spinning roundhouse kick. This would have been exciting to see. Sakura raised an eyebrow at the unexpected counterattack. Mukuro tried to use the momentum of her kick to sweep Sakura's feet out from under her. However, Sakura dodged and instinctively struck back against Mukuro's pivot leg. But Mukuro was faster and jumped up, aiming a tornado kick at Sakura's chin. This is... wow. Descriptive combat. Sakura deflected the attack with one arm, then both combatants leapt forward, glared, and charged. Charged simultaneously. Every blow they dealt was parried and countered by the other, and though they were both unarmed, the sound of their battle echoed throughout the gym. It was like a typhoon, a titty typhoon, had been compressed to the size of a car and let loose inside the gym. The other students were powerless to stop them. All they could do was stare at the breathtaking dance of death unfolding before them. You guys. After 10 minutes had passed, the enormous sound of one final impact rang throughout the gym. The two warriors leapt back once again and breathed heavily as they stared each other down. My mistake, though it's only been a few days, I cannot believe I did not notice such an impressive fighter was hiding among us. In addition to the surprise Sakura felt, it was as if the battle had left her energized. Mukuro, on the other hand, looked down at her arm, confirmed it had been wounded during the battle, and thought to herself, "She's strong. I don't think Sakura's even taking this seriously right now." Despite being constantly surrounded by firearms, blades, traps, and explosives during her time with Fenrir, this was the first time she had ever been wounded.
Mukuro was powerless before the might of the woman known as the ultimate martial artist and the strongest woman in the world. Titty Typhoon cherished blow. Just as I thought. I can't beat Sakura with my bare hands alone. If she had been directly ordered to kill Sakura, Mukuro would have opted to either snipe her from a distance or poison her. At this close... How ironic. At this close range, she would need an assault rifle just to stand a fighting chance. I don't have time for this. She looked at Makoto and confirmed that his breathing had grown even shallower. I need to hurry. But at that moment, she had no one to turn to for help. Suddenly, Mukuro had an idea. It was true that gaining an ally in this situation was impossible. However, she could still turn one person into her enemy's enemy. Mukuro took a deep breath before she charged at Sakura. Then she immediately fainted and charged at a different girl. Toko, who had been cowering in fear from the battle between Sakura and Mukuro in the corner of the gym. This is bad! Sakura was caught off guard and tried to run after her, but Mukuro was one step ahead and reached Toko first. Huh? Why me? I'm sorry. Wait, hold on! Mukuro jabbed Toko in her solar plexus and she fell into her arms. Taka and Aoi yelled out in shock. This is bad. She plans to use Toko as a hostage. Toko! In contrast to their shocked faces, Byakuya just snickered and coldly remarked, You fool. Do you really think we care if you take someone we just met a few days ago as your hostage? Mukuro just softly glanced at Byakuya and replied, You didn't meet her a few days ago. What did you say? You met her 2 years ago. Byakuya scowled. Mukuro ignored him and held her bloody arm in front of Toko's face. And then she yelled into her ears, Wake up, Genocide Jack! It seemed so random and out of place. Why would Mukuro mention the name of a notorious serial killer right now? The students looked at each other with confusion when suddenly, Toko, who had been groaning in pain, suddenly kicked off of the floor of the gym with renewed vigor. She leapt into the air much higher than any normal human should have been able to. While hovering several meters in midair, Toko swirled faster than a professional figure skater. This caused her skirt to flutter, revealing multiple pairs of sparkling scissors. Countless tally marks were scratched into her legs like a kill count carved into a fighter jet. If not for this, Toko's glamorous jumps and spins would have been a sight to behold. The girl formerly known as Toko Fukawa cackled wildly, her red eyes sparkling as her absurdly long tongue flopped out of her mouth. You called for me, and so I appear! I've got a murder IOU for YOU! Toko? The situation had changed so drastically that even Sayaka, who was silent until now, spoke up. Hey, you flash in the pan! Don't treat Genocide Jack like that depressing little four eyes! That dirty girl doesn't bathe herself at all, so I gotta put in 5 times the effort to rub myself down in the shower. Eek? Who says eek? In like a question mark. Toko's sudden change in personality sent the students clamoring among themselves. Sorry that my cackle can't be better. It's because I'm really tired. I'm waiting for this part to end so I can get something to drink, but I don't know. Hey! Leon yelled. What the hell does that mean? Monokuma just shook his head. There are some things even I don't understand. The students continued to panic at the strange turn of events. Toko, now calling herself Genocide Jack, took out a set of scissors from under her skirt and snipped them with glee as she looked around the gym. Huh? Man, it's been a while since I got to stretch my legs. So what were you guys gonna do here at the gym while I was snoozing away? Have an orgy? I understand. I totally understand. Oh wait, is it? Oh no, it's her still. I understand. I totally understand. You guys need me to cut up your clothes so you can feel even naughtier. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, right! Why the hell would I do that for you, dumbasses? My scissors are only meant for cutting the supple, tender flesh of adorable boys. Genocide Jack was causing a ruckus, but when she saw Makoto laying on the floor, she tilted her head once again. Huh? Big Mac, you're like totally about to die. What's the deal? Did the world fill you with so much despair that you all came here to commit mass suicide?
So hot! But why are you starting without me? Toko, get a hold of yourself!
Genocide Jack ignored Aoi and let her emotions run unchecked, jumping and dancing with excitement as she held her scissors.
Ah, jeez, I wanted to stab Big Mac's side myself! This spot right here, where the ribs are kinda showing already. He's not even screaming right now, though. What does that mean? Oh well, maybe I can just get used to this feeling of alienation instead.
I have no idea what's going on anymore, shouted Yasuhiro. This is all that alien's fault. Yasuhiro buried his head into his arms, but no one was paying attention to him. The student's attention was entirely focused on Genocide Jack. Using that to her advantage, Mukuro began sneaking over to Makoto. As she cautiously picked him up, she confirmed that his body temperature was starting to decrease. I can still make it there in time. Though she was I don't know why I read that in a Makoto voice, I'm sorry. Though she was carrying another person, Mukuro managed to soften the sound of her footsteps and sound like a guy, kind of, as she ran for the gym's doors. By the time the students heard Mukuro open the door, it was already too late. She had managed to escape the gym with Makoto. However, not everyone was unaware of what Mukuro was doing. Monokuma saw her movements out of the corner of his eye, but chose not to tell the students, and one other person, Kyoko Kirigiri. She saw Mukuro carry Makoto away, but did not inform the others as she watched them leave in silence. As everyone wrestled with their own personal thoughts and speculations, Hope's Peak Academy began walking a path toward a completely different chaos. Oh, maybe I should get some water. This thing! That's it, that's my thing. Are you guys okay? You still want me to continue? I'm just gonna grab something to drink, okay?
you guys talking about? What? What are you guys saying? Hang on, let me take off the be right back, but then keep the me for a second. Continue? Yes, please. I'm just gonna grab some jerk, okay? Aw, thank you. You know what? I think I'm actually enjoying reading it out loud than when I read it to myself, if that helps. I think sometimes reading out loud is a lot better than... Yeah. Oh yeah? I mean, I read it and I remember enjoying it, but it's definitely more enjoyable now that I'm reading it out loud, because I think I pay more attention when I read out loud, because I'm actually saying the words instead of skimming over them with my eyes and stuff. But anyways, sorry about that. Where were we? Yeah, it's if. It may look like IF. They put it IF as if it stands for something, but it just means if. Well, it's definitely non-canon, seeing as how the story has progressed, right? The story is basically what would have happened. Here, I'll explain, Clock, since you missed some. It's basically what would have happened if Mukuro Ikusaba survived. So it's very non-canon. With Makoto on her back, Mukuro took several trophies from the gym entrance hall, and after passing through the door leading to the hallway, she jammed the trophies through the door handles. Though Sakura could easily destroy these makeshift locks, they should buy Mukuro a few extra seconds. Then Mukuro started running to the nurse's office, the place she last spoke to Makoto. Everything necessary for performing first aid could be found there. Her little sister was her enemy. Her fellow ultimate students were her enemy. Her only ally right now was Makoto, who was on the verge of death. Mukuro knew that even she wasn't her own ally right now. Amidst all this chaos, amidst her sister's betrayal and nearly being killed, she believed. She believed she was the only one who truly understood her little sister. That's why she felt like she had to protect her. That's right. You didn't do anything wrong, Junko. You just wanted to feel despair, that's all. Right? Because you love me. That's why you wanted to kill me. You were just trying to feel despair, right? I'm sorry. I'm sorry I failed to bring you despair. But at the same time, she wondered, if she saves Makoto and betrays her sister by disrupting her plan, wouldn't that fill her with an even stronger despair? Wouldn't that make her happy? But betray Junko? What should I do? Makoto closed her eyes and listened to Makoto's weak breaths. What should I do, Makoto? On a battlefield where all you need to do is kill and survive, Makoto was invincible. She could suppress all her emotions and fully immerse herself in becoming a perfect killing machine. But on this twisted battlefield of daily high school life, she could no longer keep her emotions in check, especially around her little sister. Mukuro, the ultimate soldier, was beginning to question being ultimate despair. The impulses of the normal high school girl inside her were starting to affect her state of mind. Even so, the poor girl continued to run through the dark hallways, clinging to the conflict within herself. She was now walking along a narrow, hair-thin path. A path between the hope of Makoto Naegi and the despair of Junko and Oshima. Meanwhile, everyone still in the gym was left in a state of complete confusion. Toko was famous for being a prolific author, but even though she came across as unsociable and depressing, her mind-blowing transformation seemed to have just tossed all that aside. Toko is Genocide Jack? Sayaka trembled with fear as Jack tilted her head and stuck out her long tongue. Huh? What's with this reception, you guys? You guys didn't know who I was? Have I been found out? Or have you known all along? And why was the sullen samurai dressed like that? That outfit didn't look good for her at all. The sullen samurai was probably referring to Mukuro, which means Toko already knew Mukuro in advance. Confronted by that shocking truth, the students had no idea where to begin talking. So many things were clearly wrong by this point. Okay, Remix.
but there were a few students, such as Byakuya and Kyoko, who opted to remain calm and observe the situation. Alright, someone better spill it. Who gave Makoto an extra mouth to feed? I don't care if you want to stab him or slice him, I just can't forgive whoever put that ugly-ass hole in Big Mac's side. Oh, sorry, it was Genocide Jack again. Genocide Jack, spun her scissors in her hands. As she spoke, her emotions and facial expressions constantly changed. Even without the threat of her scissors, she exuded an aura of danger that made her unapproachable.
The flank steak of a young boy like macaroons is like a bluebird that pops out a golden egg. If you would have just let me handle it, I would have killed him so good that even Tiltil and Miltil would be eager to die. But poor Macutie's heart and soul have been stomped on by such a sloppy kill. Macutie. I gotta use that one. That actually sounds pretty exciting too! But I decline. Toko? You're not making any sense, screamed Aoi. What in the world happened to you?
Genocide Jack answered by pointing her scissors at Aoi.
What happened to me? I got bored, that's what. That sourpuss locked me up a few days ago. But when she went unconscious, I thought I'd finally get to do my thing. But I woke up for all this? Macutie's soaked with blood and I've got no clue what's going on. It's so damn confusing, all I can do is laugh.
No one seemed to be able to get a straight answer out of Jack, so Hifumi made a timid remark. I've dealt with girls like this in my 2D dating games, but this doesn't even compare. It's like there's an SSS difficulty level to clear her. I can't believe you'd ever think about her as someone worth clearing, mumbled Leon. It was clear that things were going nowhere. And as if she were responding to everyone else's expectations, Sakura stepped forward. She might be in the throes of confusion. I should try to restrain her for now. As soon as she heard that, Genocide Jack stopped moving, stuck out her lizard-like tongue, and grinned wickedly.
Oh, what's up? Are you really gonna fight me, Battle Ogre? Too bad. My lovely scissors are only for cutting through adorable boys. Women should just stay home. I won't taint my scissors with your filthy blood.
Replied Sakura. It seems my words are useless on you. Sakura entered a fighter stance, determined to restrain Jack, but Jack knew she couldn't win in a fair fight and adopted a strange stance of her own. In a normal fight, Jack would obviously lose to the ogre, but if Jack focused just on dodging attacks, the outcome of the fight would be hard to foresee. Of course, Genocide Jack's physical abilities were only obvious to a few of the students in the first place. The two women exchanged hostile stares as the other students gulped nervously and watched, except for one person. Kyoko was watching something else. She was watching Monokuma, who was in the corner of the gym, unmoving as white noise emitted from his speakers. He had stopped moving the moment everyone's attention focused on Sakura and Toko. It's possible that Madarai's hacking had been disrupted, but an infinite number of other possibilities were also swirling around in Kyoko's mind. She brushed back her hair with a gloved hand and continued to watch. Though she couldn't fully remember her talent, the actions she was taking right now were fueled by pure instinct.
Oh yeah, I have that picture.
The strange situations that kept occurring in front of her were shaking her to her very core.
Thanks for sharing, though.
Her mind worked diligently to scoop up countless amounts of information from her vast sea of memories. And as they were synchronizing with the synapses firing in her brain, Sakura and Toko kicked off the ground at the same time, and an intense impact rang throughout the gym. Phew. Thanks to the heated battle that was unfolding in the gymnasium, Mukuro Ikusaba was able to buy more time than she had imagined. As soon as she entered the nurse's office, she rummaged around for medical supplies and did what she could to stop the bleeding. Though still quite shallow, Makoto's breathing slowly stabilized. Mukuro let out a little sigh of relief. However, even though she was somehow able to stop the bleeding, she wasn't out of the woods yet. Miraculously enough, it seemed like none of Makoto's major arteries or organs were damaged. Was this perhaps thanks to his ultimate luck? Or maybe he wasn't actually all that lucky. After all, the only sort of medical treatment he could hope for was partial at best. Mukuro couldn't decide. If only I could do a blood transfusion. The nurse's office should have had several blood packs for transfusions. Mukuro suspected that Makoto's blood type might be written in his e-handbook, but as she reached over to search his pockets... Oh, haha! I see you're reaching for a sleeping boy's clothes. What in the world is about to happen next? Adults can keep playing, but you kids better press the B button, okay? There is no B button. There is only circle. Mukuro turned toward that familiar voice and saw Monokuma standing before her.
You're all alone with Makoto right now. Just think of me as a cute wild animal and let your lust lead the way. As the headmaster, I must prevent any illicit sexual relationships, but physical education classes are just fine, Missy. Though he looked just like the one that was at the gym, it was clearly a different Monokuma. Multiple Monokumas had been placed throughout the entire academy, so it wasn't a stretch for him to suddenly appear out of nowhere. Regardless, the same person was controlling all of them. Mukuro had been wary of Monokuma attacking her while she was treating Makoto's wounds, but his appearance at this particular moment seemed to take her by surprise. Junko? Asked Mukuro cautiously. Monokuma tilted his head along with his entire upper body, inquisitively. Junko? Who's that? Junko? I've never heard of that country before.
No more jokes. Answer me, Junko. You were planning to kill me earlier, right?
Junko this, Junko that. What's your problem? I'm telling you, I'm Monokuma. You must be a big disappointment if you can't even remember something like that. You're not just a disappointment as a person, you're a disappointment as a sister, too. You're too skinny and your brain's nothing but muscles, and your personality is just unbearable.
I'm sorry, said Mukuro. She didn't need to apologize, but hearing her little sister call her a disappointment yet again was enough to make the ultimate soldier recoil. Monokuma ignored her in her current situation, climbed on top of Makoto's barely breathing body and began poking his cheeks.
So, what are you gonna do with Makoto now? I'm really interested in human mating habits, you know.
What are you... asked Mukuro before trailing off. Monokuma lowered his tone and began whispering into her ear.
Makoto's a pretty nice guy, huh? He even sacrificed himself to save you. He's so generous that it's actually hopeless.
He's not dead yet, insisted Mukuro. Despite her firm tone, she couldn't hide the fear lingering in her voice.
That's the most disappointing thing about you. You can't even say, I won't let him die.
I won't let him die, Junko. Mukuro could barely get a word in as Monokuma erupted into boo-hoo-hoos and ahahas and continued to torment her.
As if you could do that. Too bad, no regrets. See ya tomorrow. Is this all because Makoto was the first person to smile at you? You, a disappointing, depressing, unladylike, inhuman killing machine!
Despite denying that he was Junko, Monokuma began speaking at length about Mukuro's past. This contradiction was very much like Junko, and Mukuro was so shaken that all she could do was watch the bear prattle on and on.
Only the fit survive in this world. The only thing that kind-hearted people can do is die, you know? As proof, you're gonna watch Makoto die really soon. Boop, 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 boop.
He won't die. Mukuro's tone of voice had become irregular ever since she took off her Junko wig. Aside from her conversation with Makoto, everything she said as Junko was from a script that her sister had written. But now, there was no script for Mukuro to rely on anymore. Mukuro was treating Monokuma like she would treat her own sister. If the other students saw her acting so weak, they'd never believe she was the same person who fought Sakura in the gym. And not just that, if anyone from her mercenary past could see her now, her stark change in attitude might make them think she was someone else entirely. Monokuma continued to rail against Mukuro.
Nope, he's gonna die! I know it's sad, but you just have to face the facts.
Monokuma wriggled his limbs and danced around, then pointed right at Mukuro's face.
Because Makoto's going to die by your hands.
Huh?
Infighting among the terrorists. The big bad terrorist silences the weak-willed Makoto before he can leak any information. Doesn't that happen all the time? In the end, all the desperate things you said in the gym turned out to be lies you told just to escape. Hoop, boop, boop, boop.
Mukuro frowned at Monokuma. You can't do that, Junko. I won't let you do that. As she blurted out those words in a trembling voice, Mukuro was gripped with confusion about what she had just said. Am I defying Junko right now? Why? It was a strange feeling. To Mukuro, it was like she was standing on the edge of a tall building and imagining what would happen if she jumped. A destructive feeling akin to holding a friend's baby and wondering what would happen if you tripped and fell. Before she knew it, fear and anxiety had suddenly taken control of Mukuro's heart. As a member of Fenrir, and as ultimate despair, Mukuro had killed innumerable people. She had handled live grenades before. She had descended from the sky in a parachute as anti-aircraft weaponry fired from all around her. Her heart never wavered on the battlefield, but now it felt like it could collapse at any second. Monokuma, however, was as stable as a tree and slightly tilted his head to the side. Huh? Weren't you listening to my story? I'm not the one who's gonna kill Makoto. You are. What are you saying, Junko? Monokuma began giving a strange explanation to a very confused Mukuro. Do you know what the suspension bridge effect really means? It means you push the person you love off a bridge and they'll be yours for eternity. I haven't heard that at all. Life doesn't always follow what your textbooks say. It's sad, but that's what love is. His words made no sense, and Mukuro couldn't think of anything to say as she stood there dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Monokuma continued his little speech, intentionally saying things meant to antagonize Mukuro. Basically, this is your big chance, you know? If you kill Makoto right here and now, nobody will ever take him away from you again. Makoto Naegi, dead by dawn. The last name he ever spoke was Mukuro Ikusaba. The last person he ever smiled at was Mukuro Ikusaba. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Oh, welcome back. Monokuma is currently antagonizing Mukuro. There was a certain appeal to Monokuma's twisted suggestion, and Mukuro found herself unsure of her own judgment. This is wrong. It has to be wrong. But it's really Junko saying all this, so doesn't that mean it's right? No, this isn't Junko, it's Monokuma. Monokuma, 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 Monokuma. And are you sure you want to help Makoto? Once he gets better, he's gonna know everything. He'll know what you did to your classmates. I can't believe you would actually erase your friends' memories of their time together and force them to kill each other. Makoto might get mad at you and say, our real enemy isn't the bear, it's her. Do you really want him to blame you for this? Mukuro's face turned pale. Boop, boop, boop. Or are you going to kill the others? If everyone except you and Makoto dies, you'll be able to spend the rest of your school life together. We can't hold a class trial with only 2 people. It might be a good idea for you both to live the rest of your lives in this academy forever. No, that's wrong. And what are you gonna do if his memories return? It's not like you were dating Makoto or anything. You were just watching him from afar the whole time. Man, you're so shy. You can shoot people's hearts and brains no problem, but you can't even woo some stupid boy into liking you. Do you want to know who Makoto had a crush on before his memories were taken away? Boop, 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 boop. Mukuro trembled as Monokuma continued pressing the issue, gradually loosening the screws keeping her heart secure. So Mukuro chose to pretend she didn't hear anything at all. All emotion vanished from her face, and she looked silently for Makoto's handbook. If you're looking for his blood type, it's not written in the handbook. Mukuro's face turned pale. Within 5 seconds, her plan to ignore Monokuma had already failed. But since your headmaster is made up of 50% kindness, I'll tell you anyway. Makoto's blood type is B. As soon as she heard him say that, all the anxiety, horror, hostility, malice, and dread churned within Mukuro had completely vanished. Thank you, Junko! Mukuro's eyes sparkled without a hint of suspicion, so she turned her back to Monokuma without a hint of suspicion, and walked towards the refrigerator containing the blood packs. Fresh blood packs should have been prepared before the plan took effect. They'll last in cold storage for 21 days. They should still be good. Despite her emotionless face, Mukuro let herself feel a small amount of satisfaction as she took a blood pack from the refrigerator. As Monokuma watched her, his normally emotionless eyes twitched ever so slightly. If a third party could see his face right now, or even if the other students could see his face right now, they'd wonder. Is Monokuma surprised? That's right, they'd have the same shocked look on their faces as if they were seeing Monokuma for the first time. At that moment, a whisper crept out of Monokuma's emotionless face. There should be a limit to how disappointing you can be. It was far quieter than a mosquito's wings. Even with her battle-hardened hearing, Mukuro couldn't hear what he said. Monokuma shook his head and the voice returned to normal. It's not like I care that you, the ultimate despair, has hope or anything. It's not like I expected much from you to begin with, so this'll at least help me feel despair. But seriously, you disappoint me. Just so you know, despair and disappointment are completely different things, okay? They're as different as bears and pandas. What are you... Mukuro's body started to shake as she turned back to look at Monokuma. He hadn't started talking any differently than usual. Junko hadn't turned off the voice modulator and started talking in her real voice or anything, and yet Mukuro was utterly terrified. Because it doesn't have like an effect that it works on everything, I think? She was terrified on instinct, not as a soldier. Half the reason she was terrified was because of her instincts as the ultimate despair, and the other half was because she was Junko's older sister. Even through Monokuma, her instincts were telling her that Junko was annoyed with her. Junko? Why? Why are you annoyed? Is it because I betrayed you? Or is it because I didn't die like you wanted me to?
Ugh, sulked Monokuma. I'm beyond annoyed. I'm really, really angry, and I'm really, really disappointed right now. I'm so pissed I could take a rage nap right now.
Monokuma's anger didn't seem any different from his usual anger toward the students, but Mukuro could instinctively sense another emotion mixed with it. Right now, she could feel that Junko was feeling hopeless disappointment. It's normal for someone who's disappointed to lose hope, but for ultimate despair, disappointment means something else entirely. To them, disappointment was tantamount to losing despair itself. Mukuro was a member of Ultimate Despair. At her sister's behest, Mukuro had soiled her hands many times in order to fill the world with despair. Despite her pride toward being a member of Ultimate Despair, there was a clear difference between Mukuro and her sister. Junko Enoshima was despair incarnate. She was born in despair, letting it infect other people's hope so it could rot them from the inside out, twisting them into her own image. For Junko, feeling hope was its own despair. Creating despair in others created despair in herself, which caused her to feel both intense pain and intense pleasure. Junko had walked the fracture created from the conflict between pleasure and penance all her life. Eventually, the fracture would widen until it swallowed the world and tore it in half. But Mukuro, on the other hand, had neither hope nor despair for the world. At least, not when she was a member of Fenrir. Ever since she was a child, Mukuro believed she was meant to spread despair because of her sister. She didn't harbor any ill will toward the world. She simply accepted she was meant to spread despair and chose to walk the same path as her sister. The doubt she felt was only a recent development, when Junko told her about the plan. When she watched the world burn at the hands of terrorists wearing Monokuma masks, she never wavered once. However, as soon as she heard about her sister's plan to make their classmates kill each other, Makoto included, a strange feeling began to stir within her. What started as a seed of doubt soon grew into a thorny vine ensnaring Mukuro's feet. As soon as she disguised herself as Junko and finished meeting the other students, as soon as she had confirmed that everyone's memories had been completely taken away, that vine began tightening around Mukuro's heart. They're gone. Junko's the only one who knows about me now. That's it. But that's no problem. It's just like old times. Things will never go back to how they used to be, but that's fine. This should be fine. She had relinquished the past 2 years she had spent with her friends so she could betray them and deliver death and despair unto them. Though her heart ached, Mukuro was beyond feeling guilt or remorse for her actions. But the question, why does my heart ache like this, still remained unanswered. Perhaps that's why she spent so much time talking to Makoto when he was in the nurse's office. And when Makoto gave her that one particular answer, something changed inside of her.
In return, I promise that if I do decide to kill someone, it won't be you.
The words Mukuro blurted out to Makoto weren't improvised to further her role as Junko. It was an honest sentiment from the bottom of her heart. She was even planning to ask Junko herself if Makoto could somehow be spared from her plan. Over the past 2 years, Mukuro's interests had been slowly shifting away from her sister and toward the world itself. By extension, her interests also included Makoto, the first person to ever smile at her and make her feel connected to the world. He was like a sapling of pure honesty that had taken root in Mukuro's heart. But by the time she realized that, the tree had already rotted. As Mukuro struggled to understand the situation, Monokuma let out a sigh and said, "I wonder which part of you is a wolf, anyway. You're just a dog that blindly follows Junko's orders. What does the tattoo on your hand even mean? Are you just a bitch who's pledged her loyalty to her owner? I bet Toko would say that. I'm positive." Monokuma continued to talk as Mukuro stood in confusion. "I was obviously lying when I said Makoto's blood type is B." "What?" cried Mukuro. "You lied? Junko!" "A normal person would have been suspicious. I never thought you'd actually believe me just now. I must have misplaced my eyes because I totally did not see that coming.
Not even with my ability to predict the future. How shocking. Geez, I'm about to start crying my eyes out like some sort of robot cat. Seriously.
It's gonna be okay, Junko, said Mukuro. I know our plan kind of fell apart, but I'm still on your side. Are you feeling alright? Because I'll do anything.
Snap! A harsh sound came from Monokuma's mouth. That sound was one of my circuits overloading. It's been so long since I felt this angry. Meet me on the roof of the school. I'll smash out all your baby teeth.
Monokuma started shadowboxing in front of Mukuro, who remained frozen in place, clutching a blood pack in her hand. She still looked confused, and Monokuma threw up his arms in frustration.
You're so disappointing, I can't even predict it anymore. Roar!
A threatening roar burst from Monokuma. That was threatening, alright. Burst from Monokuma's mouth as he leapt at Mukuro with his sharp claws extended. At that moment, her face became completely emotionless. It was not a conscious action. The defensive instinct she honed during her time with Fenrir temporarily suppressed her emotions as she countered Monokuma's attack. Mukuro grabbed a nearby IV stand and used it to parry Monokuma's claws. However, Monokuma's claws seemed to be made with a special alloy, and easily sliced the bar in half diagonally. But instead of following up his attack, Monokuma continued talking to Mukuro.
I guess you're not much of a disappointment when it comes to fighting. In fact, if you were so pathetic that you died from that single attack, that would have been interesting in its own way. But right now, you're just incompetent at everything.
I'm sorry, said Mukuro. I couldn't help blocking your attack. But there's no way I can fight you, Junko. After all, I'm all you have. I'm the only one who understands you at all. Mukuro's words were riddled with endless dismay. The contrast between her usual stoic self and the way she was acting now was so stark, people might assume she had multiple personalities. However, Monokuma just quietly stared at her. He was perfectly still, as if all his functions had powered down completely. But Mukuro continued to share her feelings. There's no way I can just leave you alone. And then Monokuma broke his silence. But...
Ah! Hey, Quinny! It's an experience!
Actually, Boitano, that may be Makoto's blood on the floor.
I hope it's not Chris's blood.
It's interesting, isn't it, to see Mukuro's personality, because you don't really get to know her much. There's no way I can just leave you alone, and then Monokuma broke his silence, but at that moment a monitor in the nurse's office lit up, displaying a girl's face, Junko Enoshima. At the same time, a voice completely unlike Monokuma's began to play from the speakers. Hey, Mukuro! Junko! It had been several days since Mukuro had heard her sister's real voice. Though her face remained emotionless, excitement sparkled in her eyes. However, that shine immediately dulled. I'm grateful to you, Mukuro. I mean it. Junko's voice emanating from the speakers sounded very gentle and kind. Junko? I'm really sorry. I said so many mean things to you. I even tried to kill you earlier, and I was about to make you do something horrible just now. Even though I know about your feelings toward Makoto. You don't have to force yourself. Even if you didn't notice, it was totally obvious to anyone looking at you. You never cared about the class photos, but when Makoto said he was going to take one, you made sure you were facing the camera. And then Junko Enoshima, the ultimate despair, flashed a smile. A smile, a pure, sweet smile. I don't know why I said it like that. On the monitor, she looked like a normal high school girl teasing her older sister. And yet Mukuro could feel despair and anxiety encasing themselves around her. I always thought you should have tried harder to take pictures with Makoto, but I guess that's what makes you so disappointing. Still, even though you're disappointing and annoying, I still love you. Mukuro trembled upon hearing those words. I love you. That's all she ever wanted to hear her sister say. Mukuro believed. No matter what Junko said, she believed she really loved her. She believed she was the only one who could truly understand the despair known as Junko Enoshima. She was naive. As soon as she heard Junko say, I love you, Mukuro realized she never completely understood her sister. It was only at that moment that Mukuro finally understood her sister's feelings. Junko's words right now were kind. Perhaps that kindness was completely honest. The words "I love you" might have been true as well. However, for Junko Enoshima, this was her way of saying goodbye. She was severing the ties between them. It was painfully clear to Mukuro. And then, before she could even say anything, the girl in the monitor made a remark that cut Mukuro to the bone.
I'm sure someday you'll make your dreams come true. Ultimate Despairs never talk to each other like this. A simple truth stabbed into Mukuro's heart. Junko had no further use for her. Her own sister was parting ways with her. Mukuro had dedicated over 10 years of her life to the cause of ultimate despair, and at this moment, it all counted for nothing. But those years no longer mattered to Mukuro. Her sister's rejection was more than enough to send her into the depths of despair. That's why Mukuro, even now, clung to a small sliver of hope. Meanwhile, Junko was still on the monitor. Yeah, right. Did you really think I'd say something that nice? You're so annoying. Can't you just hurry up and disappear already?
Mukuro hoped Junko would say something like that. She hoped that she'd start verbally abusing her again, or call her useless and incompetent. Mukuro was no masochist, but she'd prefer to be showered with bullets and contempt than endure this kind of emotional pain. But
I love you, Mukuro. Bye-bye.
The monitor went black, leaving Mukuro to process the horrible goodbye she'd just received. And as if on cue, Monokuma started moving again.
Isn't family love so nice? By the way, did you know that in about half of all murder cases, the killer is a family member?
Monokuma spoke in his unusual tone of voice, but it was unclear if his words were getting through to Mukuro. Mukuro let the blood pack in her hand fall to the floor and tightened her grip on the iron bar she was still holding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Junko, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. She mumbled quietly as if she were chanting a spell and walked past the blood pack on the floor to Makoto's bedside with the iron bar in her hands. I'll do it properly. I'll make sure I do it. So...
Oh? Said Monokuma, perking up. What are you gonna do properly? What are you gonna properly do to Makoto with that big, thick rod you got there? Are you gonna do him? Or are you gonna do him in? Either way, I'm starting to feel some heart-throbbing excitement.
Mukuro looked like she had been completely broken. Monokuma walked closer to her with eager anticipation. Suddenly, Monokuma's body silently floated into the air, like Winnie the Pooh that one time.
Huh?
With no expression on his face, Monokuma tried to see what had just happened to him, and in the blink of an eye, an iron bar ripped through his body. The tip of the bar, which had been cut diagonally earlier into a sharp point, went straight through Monokuma and stabbed into a surveillance camera. The lens was completely destroyed, and the camera shot out sparks as it broke down. The iron bar was still stabbed into the surveillance camera as Monokuma dangled from the other end. He opened his mouth as if something, but only static came out. A few seconds later, his functions came to a complete stop. Without making a sound at all, Mukuro had kicked Monokuma into the air. As soon as Monokuma's power source and his bomb circuit had perfectly aligned with the surveillance camera in the nurse's office...
Like Winnie the Pooh.
Mukuro plunged the iron bar into all three of them. No normal human has the skill to utilize such a technique, not even an ultimate. All the hesitation within Mukuro had vanished. Her eyes sparkled like a panther stalking its prey at night. A tense aura surrounded Mukuro, even more so than when she fought Sakura earlier. Ignoring Monokuma's lifeless form, she looked at Makoto as he breathed softly and remembered her sister's parting words. Oh, so this is despair, she mumbled to herself. I'm so sorry, Junko. I never really understood what despair was. She spoke without emotion, like a machine. But it's going to be all right now. I finally understand. Hidden within her, passion began to stir. So, I'll make sure I make you happy, Junko. I'll make sure I fill you with despair. I'll save Makoto. I'll make sure the others don't die. I'll let them escape from this place. I'll deal with the people on the outside, too. You invested so much time and killed so many people for the sake of this plan. And I'll destroy every last remnant of it, for you. This was not an act of vengeance toward the sister who had abandoned her. This was an act of mercy. Stuck between the ultimate despair and the hope she gained from Makoto, Mukuro was being refined into something that was unlike despair or hope. and she had no way of knowing where her path would lead. I wonder what the others are doing. Over 10 minutes had passed. The sound of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hall. Genocide Jack had continued to dodge Sakura's attacks with her tricky movements, but when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert," Genocide Jack stopped in her tracks.
Oh my! Getting chewed out by my bespectacled Byakuya is making my masochistic side get all tingly. They say the line between sadism and masochism is paper thin, but in my case it's more like a Venn diagram. Words can't explain these hot waves of passion squirming from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. As she rambled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in her room. Half the students stayed behind to keep an eye on her, while the rest left to search the grounds of the school. As soon as the door to the nurse's office opened, Kyoko saw a non-functioning Monokuma with a hole in its chest and the remains of a surveillance camera. It wasn't just in the nurse's office, though. On their way there, the students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras and scattered Monokuma bodies. This was a clear violation of school regulations, but if Mukuro was allied with Monokuma, those regulations wouldn't apply to her anyway. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker, Beshiki Madarai. So the students assumed that Madarai had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Mukuro on his own. With that in mind, Kyoko turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. It was unusually quiet. The beds were empty, but Kyoko could see from the bloodstains that someone had been resting there recently.
"Shh, looks like they're already gone," Mondo remarked, but as he was about to leave, Kyoko spoke up behind him.
"I'm going to stay here with Chihiro and search for clues."
"Huh?" asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening.
"Clues?"
Kyoko continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. "Yes, there may be some clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured you would be the best candidate for investigating machinery." Sakura spoke up. "But isn't that dangerous?" Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Mukuro, she had joined the other students in searching the school grounds. Kyoko shook her head and replied, "I'm sorry to say this, but if things get out of hand, Chihiro and I will just be in your way. I think it's better if we search for clues here instead of doing nothing. Besides, we might be able to use Monokuma's parts to detect any radio broadcasts from the outside world." You certainly have a point. Understood, we'll be exploring this floor for a while. Perhaps shout for us if anything happens. Sakura left the nurse's office. How did she destroy Monokuma like this? As Chihiro cautiously stood over Monokuma's remains, Kyoko started searching through the room. She zeroed in on one of the beds and began studying it intensely. A moment later, Kyoko was satisfied with what she found and let out a small sigh before she spoke. "Chihiro, let me apologize to you in advance."
"Huh?"
"I dragged you into this gamble of mine, so if anything happens, run out into the hallway and call for help."
"What does that mean?"
But instead of answering Chihiro's question, Kyoko started talking to one of the empty beds. "Let me say this first. I'm prepared to hear your story. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, I promise not to decide if it's a lie or the truth until after I've listened to it in its entirety. I keep saying entirety. Chihiro looked confused. She didn't understand what Kyoko meant at all. The ultimate question mark lowered her eyes and turned to the ultimate programmer to make a request. "Chihiro, does your laptop have a voice recording function? And do you also have a microphone?"
"Huh? Yeah?"
"I want you to use this to record everything we're about to hear."
"But there's no one here."
As Chihiro wondered to herself, she began connecting Monokuma's parts to her laptop and turned on the record function.
"I'm sure we'll pick up every sound in this room now,"
said Chihiro nervously. Satisfied, Kyoko nodded and once again started talking to the empty bed. "So what were you going to do if I told everyone that I'd found Makoto?" When she heard Kyoko say that, Chihiro looked back at her and was surprised by what she saw. At that moment, the ultimate programmer was kneeling on the floor next to Monokuma's remains. From that position, she was able to see it. Of all the beds in the nurse's office, there was one bed in particular that couldn't be seen from the entrance. Underneath that bed lay a limp Makoto. A blood pack was hidden next to the bed and slowly providing Makoto with a transfusion. The contents of the blood pack were clear. Rather than blood, it seemed to be some kind of saline solution used in emergency hydration. Though it wouldn't be as effective as an actual blood transfusion, it was enough to keep him from going into shock. Though that was the extent of Chihiro's medical knowledge. She was already surprised that Makoto had been in the nurse's office the entire time. Not only that, but Kyoko wasn't talking to the bed that Makoto was under, which sent chills throughout Chihiro's body. However, there was nobody under the bed that Kyoko was facing. But the moment Chihiro noticed that, a voice rang out from underneath it. As soon as everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, I was planning to take advantage of that opportunity to take someone hostage. As Chihiro cautiously lowered her head until it was nearly touching the floor, she was able to make out who was talking. Surprisingly, the person hiding there was clinging to the frame of the bed, like a ninja clinging to the ceiling. Presumably, if someone had glanced under the bed quickly, they wouldn't have noticed anybody was there, though Chihiro had no idea how the person was able to hide under the bed for so long. She could at least understand that their strength was beyond normal human levels. There was no question that the person hiding under the bed was Mukuro Ikusaba. Oh my god, it's 10:38. But you pretended not to notice. Why? Mukuro's voice was as cold as ice, but Kyoko didn't even flinch as she responded. Because I wanted to hear your side of the story. I knew you were hiding under that bed. Compared to the others, the frame was slightly more pronounced. Chihiro tried comparing the beds to see if this was true, but she couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Kyoko's natural observation skills could let her see something like that. Mukuro seemed to come to a similar conclusion and appeared from under the bed without making a sound. Her face was stoic and cold. Compared to the bomb inside Monokuma, Chihiro thought she was even more terrifying. However, Mukuro ignored Chihiro and shifted her gaze at Kyoko. She leaned against a wall and let her arms fall to her sides as she threw out another question. Why do you want to hear what I have to say? Kyoko thought about this simple question for a while, as if she were searching within her own heart for the answer. If I have to provide an answer, it's because I wish to remain neutral. Kyoko quietly looked down. I'm currently missing most of my memories. I don't know who I am or what talent I had to be accepted into this school. She could hear... I'm derping. She could hear Chihiro gasp behind her, but Kyoko didn't mind and continued. But even so, I believe I should listen to what you have to say. Regardless of whether you're good or evil, I must hear all the facts in order to know the truth. Good and evil don't matter. I'll come to a conclusion based on what I see and hear. I think that's the methodology that's been instilled in me. Can't read. I see. I completely forgot you were like that, Kyoko. But before I listen to what you have to say, I'd like to ask you one question first. What is it? Mukuro's reply was completely emotionless. Kyoko presented her question as if she were asking it of herself as well. What was my talent that allowed me to attend this academy? The answer to that question was simple, blah. Kyoko, you're the ultimate detective. That answer marked a turning point for both girls. Thank you. I have a better understanding of the situation now. Kyoko slowly raised her head and presented a theory. If my memory loss wasn't just a coincidence, then your group has the ability to erase people's memories. With that in mind, if we take into consideration the situation that unfolded in the gym earlier, I can only come to one possibility. Possibility? Yes. What you said to Byakuya when he thought you were taking Toko hostage, talking Toko sausage. The fact that Makoto called out Mukuro's name, sorry if I skipped something there, the things that Mukuro confirmed and denied, Genocide Jack's outlandish claims, these key factors that Kyoko noted using her special observation skills were converging in her mind to form one answer. It's possible that Byakuya and Toko's memories were also erased like mine, but I don't think their circumstances are quite the same as mine. But if our memories can be controlled so freely, it calls into question whether the day Monokuma appeared was really the same day we entered the academy. Like you said, it's possible that we've known Toko Fukawa for the last 2 years. Takio. What do you mean? Oh, sorry, what do you mean? Chihiro cried, still working on connecting her laptop to Monokuma's parts. Kyoko continued, speaking to both Chihiro and Mukuro. We thought we were knocked unconscious with sleeping gas the moment we arrived at the school, but it's possible that we were simply made to think that's what happened. For example, we may have already spent the last 2 years at Hope's Peak Academy, and our memories of that time were completely erased. It's even possible that we aren't even ultimates at all, just random people who've been implanted with 16 years worth of false information. Though Kyoko's claims sounded ridiculous, her face was completely serious. She looked up at Mukuro once again, which means I'm considering the possibility that your crazy story is actually the truth. Kyoko's declaration filled the room with silence, but she didn't let that silence overwhelm her. Kyoko cut through it with her own words. Without evidence, all I can do is make hypotheses. That's why I want to hear what you have to say, Mukuro. I have no intention of blindly believing what you're going to say. That was a weird pause. Or what that self-proclaimed hacker who took over Monokuma said. She paused and lowered her eyes again, then declared with powerful determination, "Even so, I intend to come to a conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can." Oh my god, I'm so tired. Hold on a sec. Sorry, I had to drink some water. Oh, whoa. Kyoko's conviction was clear from her voice. Mukuro's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tapestry of emotions flashed across her face as she looked toward Kyoko. Oh, how long is this novel indeed? But when she opened her mouth, her expression and voice were completely devoid of emotion. That's right, I completely forgot you were like that. Mukuro repeated this to herself softly, then faced Kyoko and declared, "That must be why Junko took care to erase more of your memories compared to the others." "Very well, I'll tell you